So how was your weekend? Hopefully it was pretty good. Plenty of great things happening over the weekend in conversations, and some not so great conversations as well, but some that we did include were the fact that Anthony Weiner apparently is pleading guilty to the whole sexting to a minor thing. Apparently that's a problem. Also, Pippa Middleton got married and had a big royal wedding of her own, almost. And wildlife is great and cute and cuddly till it tries to drag you into the ocean to kill you. That viral video and more stories from the past weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday wrapping up. For today, it's Monday, 22nd of May, 2017. Welcome to the podcast. This is the weekend wrap-up for a daily recap, if you can say, 3 days from Friday to this morning from thisistheconversation.com, where we have great conversations with you across the internets all day long, all night long, all days long, 7 days a week to include the weekend. We don't do a daily podcast recap for Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but we do recap them all in one big slot on Monday morning. Thank you so much for joining us for all our great conversations and just being great people as it is. Stop by our website, thisistheconversation.com, for great fun things to do all the time. And make sure you stop by our sponsors page and check out the great sponsors we have helping you do great things. They help us stay on the air and help you in doing what you need to do. This week, we are spotlighting again Cloud9 Living, because there are plenty of people out there who need to live the high life, live off their bucket list, do great things, and they need a great way to do that. And they don't necessarily know how to make it happen. If you want to ride a hot air balloon, they have packages to send you to do that. If you want to drive a race car, they have packages to do that. You want to climb mountains or lower in mountains, they have packages to do that. And they have packages at a discount. In fact, if you go to the website right now, you will find, or go to our website, you'll find a link that will let you get 10% off any gift certificate you buy. So you can buy whatever amount for whatever package you think you want. And if you think that deal is just a little too crazy for you, you can hand it off to someone else and they can live their life the way they want to at a discount. It's very simple. Go to thisistheconversation.com/sponsors and click on Cloud9 Living or any of the other great sponsors helping us keep this thing going. Now, let's get things going right now. It's going backwards from the 19th of May to the 20th and 21st, being yesterday, Sunday. Of course, wrapping up one of the first tweets we had for this morning. We opened up Friday with news that Julian Assange had his prosecutors in Sweden were dropping the rape investigating charges for Julian Assange. So that means he could now, in theory, leave the Ecuadorian embassy, which he's been living in for about 2 years. However, he still has a warrant out for his arrest for failing to appear in court dealing with that same rape charge. So while they dropped the official charges to the investigation, saying that essentially they've wasted enough time and energy on this one dude, they still have, because of paperwork, a charge against him, or at least a failure to appear charge. We talked about how on Friday you should just show up and just get it done with, but who knows what else they might do. He's really afraid right now that the Americans, the United States, will actually try to extradite him to the United States and punish him for his WikiLeaks activity as opposed to this actual real crime. So not that WikiLeaks is or is not a crime. That hasn't been determined. But since he was charged with sexual assault, that was something that was in the books. Basically, Assange is not more afraid of the Americans and what they may or may not do than opposed to what the Swedes are going to do at this point, since the charges are technically dropped. Conor McGregor made it look even closer to being official to a fight with Floyd Mayweather, doing some boxing things as he applied for a boxing license in Nevada. That doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to box Floyd Mayweather or do it in Nevada, but it sure looks pretty suspicious that something that was going down in that way. Of course, Mayweather's camp saying things are on hold, nothing's in stone, and nothing coming out from Dana White's camp as well. Chris Cornell's family says that Ativan use may have contributed to his death. They're blaming the drug Ativan, the use that Chris Cornell was using for basically depressive thoughts and not being on tact. And, of course, that night after that concert, it just went off the rails for on some accounts. Chris not being able to respond well to that, hanging himself in the shower in his hotel room overnight from the concert. We'll see what happens. Of course, officially ruled a suicide. It's kind of hard to not do a hanging as a suicide, but we'll see if any autopsy results will tell what's in the system and what may have affected his demeanor, if chemical. Anthony Weiner is going to plead guilty, reportedly. This is what he said on Friday, as the lawyer said, guilty to sexting of a minor. Now, this would not be an issue if for the fact that the minor essentially outed Anthony Weiner for all the lewd things that he was doing while he was a minor and how they met up on social media, of course, because that's how these things happen. We'll see what's going to happen from Anthony Weiner's camp on that end. Remember, this thing turned into a search of his laptop, which found a cache of documents that apparently Huma Hadeen, his wife, had sent to him or used his laptop for, which had more of the Clinton emails and made that thing become a thing again. Weiner becoming technically the October surprise before the November election because of this, even though that case was dropped pretty handily. Late on Friday or early Thursday, you could say, Fox News fired Bob Beckel, one of the hosts of The Five, for giving an alleged racial remark to a crew member. Now, Fox News is having issues with sexual harassment deals and also right now being sued for racial discrimination. In fact, one person suing for both racial and sexual discrimination. So they don't want to deal with any of this stuff. And one would think that people in these positions would know better, but we find more and more often that apparently they don't. Once you get into a certain level of success, apparently the dummy lights come on and you just stop thinking about doing anything that's rational. Bob Beckel gone from The Five officially again. A judge declared on Friday that Prince's 6 siblings are the heirs of his estate. Now, that's not anything shocking news, but it just had to be officially done. Now, there were other people, including some alleged outside people who believed that they had a right to this fortunes, and they applied for it. But the 6 actual siblings that are listed as Prince's listed siblings will be the heirs to his full estate. They'll be able to manage the music catalog plus all the properties and things from that point on. HSBC's bank's voice recognition system was breached by a customer's twin, and not even an identical twin, a fraternal twin, a non-identical twin in any case. They don't even look at each other. They just happen to be born at the same time. But they're not identical. They're fraternal. They they're not identical twins. And somehow his twin brother was able to speak into his voicemail system for the HSBC system, and it allowed him access to his banking account, something that HSBC people are a bit worried about, especially as we get more and more towards this audio computing thing. They're definitely looking into this. Donald Trump apparently told the Russians that firing James Comey eased the pressure from the investigation during the visit on the Russians, and that Comey was a nut job. This came out fairly late Thursday and became the big story on Friday, the over and over again thing about Trump calling Comey a nut job and saying that now that Comey's gone, this whole thing's going to slowly blow over, which, if it's true, it's not going to slowly blow over. We found out that the driver in the Times Square rampage was charged and shouted that I wanted to kill them in the whole charging procedures. The person involved in this, very disturbed, a very long history of DUIs and just disturbing behavior. Apparently had some sort of real issues in getting into this situation where, of course, one young lady died, 22 other people were injured in him driving into a barricade of people, 2 or 3 barricades of people, till finally stopping in Times Square on last week. Now, Friday through yesterday, we had 40,000 AT&T workers on strike for the weekend. So if you had some issues with your coverage, that was probably it. They went on strike late Friday because they couldn't reach a deal, and they're back to work today. They had a not so much a lawful strike, but a controlled strike where they knew the timeline. They were going to see what issues would be there, and then they'll probably be back at the bargaining tables sometime today to work on the new contract. But since no terms could be dealt with as of Friday, as they said, basically 5 o'clock quitting time, AT&T's workers in New Jersey went on strike for the weekend, and we'll see what happens as the week progresses. Colin Kaepernick still doesn't have a job in the NFL, but his 49ers jersey will be donated to the Smithsonian. Now, he is a crucial point of history, whether you like it or not, as he was the leader of the movement of players choosing to kneel instead of standing for the national anthem of the United States in a protest of some of the treatments to black people and, of course, supporting some of the Black Lives Matters and their ilk. While many other players across the league did the same thing in other teams, Colin Kaepernick was an interesting piece because he was barely on the team at the time, essentially losing his job for a second time to another quarterback, and kind of rode the pine for the entire season. So he wasn't the star quarterback making a statement. He was the backup quarterback making a statement. And because he wasn't, quote-unquote, good enough for the team, he is no longer a member of that team, the San Francisco 49ers. He has not yet found a job and not yet been picked up on the free agent market to quarterback or backup any other team. So we'll see how long he becomes he stays a relevant factor in our history. Ev Williams, the founder, one of the founders of Twitter and the main CEO of Twitter right now, says the internet is broken, and which is ironic because he essentially made part of it broken. He was one of the founders of Twitter and one of the creators of the Blogger program, one of the original programs allowed people to get online and share their feelings on pretty much everything. Now, he's trying to fix Twitter. He's trying to fix the whole thing in communication with his program called Medium, and he's complaining about too many people trolling people on the internet when he sort of is the problem with that. One of the fixes he has was, of course, the hiring of his friend Biz Stone back into the Twitter fold to take over the corporate culture of Twitter, to hopefully get the people inside of this company working better together so that they can come out with better projects in the process. Pippa Middleton got married over the weekend. And that's, big news, I guess, if you're a royal fan. But the really big news is she had a almost royal wedding of her own. It wasn't, since she's not in line for the throne, it's not quite as big as her cousins, but it was pretty big. His sister should say, because her sister married the actual prince. But it was pretty big. A big, massive affair for the weekend. A lot of folks watching big, funny hats for the weekend. The NAACP voted to dismiss their organization's president, and they're pledging a system-wide refresh. Essentially, many young activists say the NAACP isn't down with the times. Basically, they're still marching when more effective actions should be made, including speaking out directly to power, including specifically Donald Trump and some of the crazy things he's been doing. We'll see how that goes as the NAACP pledges to resurface as a newer, fresher, more powerful organization to battle injustices in this new millennia. Anderson Cooper had to apologize for a crude on-air remark he directed at Jeffrey Lord. Jeffrey Lord, one of the CNN analysts who is a Republican activist and essentially defends everything Trump says, got a quip from Anderson Cooper, basically said, well, if the president took a dump on his desk, you would defend that too, which is rather rude and pretty much out of sorts, even for the guy who did the eye roll to Kellyanne Conway a few weeks ago. Whether Anderson Cooper will actually be punished for this, probably not. This happened Thursday, so it's water under the bridge, but it is a sign that maybe some of the press are having some issues and they may be cracking under the pressure of the administration. Iranian President Rouhani wins the re-election by a landslide. Now, this is the president that was currently in the deal. The guy that we just did a deal with, we being the U.S., did a deal with for the releasing of sanctions for some things. And there was issue or worry about Iran maybe going the other way of electing someone a bit more conservative because some people, the older people, really wanted to be more hardline. But essentially the young people prevailed. The odd thing about the Iranians and much of the actual Muslim world in the Middle East, more than 50% of the population is in its early 20s or younger. So you have a lot of young people, a whole lot of young people who are waiting in the wings for things to happen that aren't being allowed to do things because the older people are still in charge. Sort of like myself as a Gen X person being squeezed out by the millennials below me and the baby boomers who just won't give up on a lot of things as well. It's like that in Iran, except it's like that many millennials are just waiting to push everyone out, and none of the older generations are giving up any status. We'll see how things play out in Iran and the Middle East with those types of odds. Your winner for the Preakness Stakes is cloud computing, which means Always Dreaming will not get a shot at the Triple Crown this year. Robert E. Lee's statue was removed from a monument in New Orleans. It was the fourth Confederate monument removed, which means they're all said and done. Now, what will be done with those spots? They're already trying to figure out what to do with many of them. Some will be replaced by just American flags. The Robert E. Lee statue will be replaced by a water sculpture, and all of the monuments will be placed inside of a new museum being built to still have some Confederate love, for lack of a better term, some way to study the Confederacy. While many people are arguing that getting rid of the monuments was a real problem in whitewashing the history, some people were saying, and had very good beefs, that showcasing these Confederate monuments is essentially just rubbing the noses of the black people and anyone else of the past history that was very damaging and very, very dark of this United States. Those Olympic medals that were won 9 months ago in Rio are literally falling apart. Not only is the infrastructure from the games falling apart, but the actual medals that were won by the Olympians apparently weren't very good quality. And this may be a larger metaphor for the state of Brazil and the state of the Olympic Games as they run. But for all those people with those great medals are trying to find ways to keep them preserved because they literally cannot stay together. North Korea launched a mystery missile, a medium-range ballistic missile. They already launched one missile earlier in the weekend, and later in the weekend, they launched another one. The first one deemed successful, and that was when North Korea said they're basically open for business and can attack the United States if they're provoked. When we posted this conversation, there was not any real details on the missile other than it being medium-range ballistic at the time. Miron Role, who was an NFL player and a fairly good one for a short period of time, knew that his time in the in the pros, was going to be short. In fact, he said it before he even went pro, which freaked out a lot of people who wanted to get him in the draft because he had plans on becoming a neurosurgeon, and he now has his PhD in neurosurgery. Congratulations to Mr. Role for doing a great thing, doing what he said he was going to do, not play this game for very long because he had the talent and skill. He played it. He's done. He's going off to do bigger and better things for himself and for humanity, I'd say, because you can think he probably he can touch a lot more lives with his hands doing neurosurgery than, believe it or not, playing football for the Ravens. Viral video of a sea lion dragging a young girl off a pier into the water went all over the place late weekend, and if you haven't seen it, I'm sure it's somewhere near. And there are different reports of whether it was a sea lion or a seal, but essentially a water mammal jumped out of the pier, grabbed the girl by her dress, and drug her in. A bystander jumped in the water to pull the girl out of the water. The seal stayed in the water to save the day in that case. But a marine biologist basically said what you're looking at is an issue of people going down and feeding these animals, and it was it wasn't in a conservatory. It was basically off a pier near a shopping district. People going down and feeding the animals because they think it's cute, and now that they're in a migration pattern where they're just all around, they're hungry and they're used to getting food, just like we say bears are encroaching on our space because we have dumpsters of food there, when technically we're encroaching on the bear space that we were there. We're getting closer and closer to the water and getting more and more at ease with throwing crumbs at them like they were pigeons, and they're not pigeons. They are wild creatures. Students walked out of Mike Pence's Notre Dame commencement speech, which seems like it's a bit more dramatic than as read. The issue was it wasn't a spontaneous thing where Pence stood up and they decided to walk. This was planned out days in advance. This was going to happen. They just kept it under wraps fairly well. And when Mike Pence stood up, that's when the students that planned the protest got up and left the field. It wasn't as spontaneous as many people thought it was. So you can say what you want about the protest against Mike Pence. You can say what you want about the letter read to him at Hamilton, things like this. But Mike Pence seems to be the bulk of the Trump hate, as opposed to Trump, who keeps plenty of love from his supporters in there. Now, Trump spoke on Sunday to a group of Muslims in a Muslim kind of anti-terrorist group conference with many leaders in the Muslim world. And he basically said that they, being the Muslim leaders, need to figure out how to drive out the terrorists from their own lands and not wait for the U.S. to get the job done for them. he made a pledge to stick with what we're doing so far. In fact, he signed a $110 billion deal to get $110 billion from the Saudi Arabians to fund them with more stuff to help fight terrorism, including a brand new Twitter social media center that helps just like the FBI has, to help them filter out where the terrorists may be chatting things up. But Trump did say it's up to the Muslims, the Muslim countries, to do it themselves and not wait for the U.S. to get everything done for them. Our first tweet for the day is the Ringling Brothers Circus. Their final show after 146 years happened last night. You probably saw that on Facebook Live and many other streaming places because it was the very last show, period. The company is closing its doors, literally taking down the tent for the last time. Everyone must go. All the animals that were still in the show have been accounted for and will go off to animal conservatories and zoos and other places like that. But there's plenty of people with skills that may or may not seem like they're viable, acrobats and animal trainers and even the crews that do the music and the trucks and things like that, who now have to find some other jobs. Now, there will be other circuses going on, and I'm pretty sure someone will buy what's left of the pieces and turn it into some sort of traveling show. Maybe they'll get absorbed in something like Circus du Soleil, which has no animals on its own, and do a big magical show on that end. But the magic and magistry of the animals in the show is now officially done. That was the stories we had that span for the weekend, from Friday through Sunday and starting early this morning. Thank you so much for joining us for this podcast. If you want to find out more great things about me, go to my website, jclevelandpayne.net. Want to find out more things about This Is a Conversation? The website is thisisaconversation.com, where we have links to all sorts of things, including the conversations themselves. And you can find out about our sponsors, people that help us do this so we can have great conversations with you. And this week's sponsor we're spotlighting is Cloud9 Living. If you have a bucket list, and of course we all do, and you have a few things you can't figure out how to get off that bucket list, maybe it's on the menu for Cloud9 Living. And maybe if you stop by our website, thisisaconversation.com/sponsors, and click on Cloud9 Living, you can find yourself a way to get that dream going at a discount. That's no maybe. If you click on the link, you'll get a 10% off for all gift certificates you buy from Cloud9 Living. So you can get your dream done. You can get other people's dreams done. You can get all the dreams done you want to. These make great gifts. So check it out at thisisaconversation.com/sponsors. Meanwhile, conversations continue. So find us on Twitter at @th_conversation. Find us on Facebook at This Is the Conversation. And, of course, thisistheconversation.com. And join us again tomorrow where we'll recap the day's conversation. Plenty of great things we were talking about. I'm sure we'll get some Trump Western Wall talk in there because he's doing his thing in Israel today. And other things that hopefully aren't all about Trump. Thank you so much for joining us for the conversation. And be back. Subscribe to the podcast. Be back tomorrow for more great podcasting from This Is the Conversation.